Again, thank you for joining us. My name is Jarah Crowner, and I'm a policy and program analyst at UC Berkeley SafeTREC. And today we're going to discuss street story and take a closer look at the importance of sharing stories and perceptions of safety. SafeTREC is a safe transportation research and education center. It was founded in 2000 by the late Dr. David R. Ragland. The center is affiliated with the Berkeley School of Public Health and the Institute of Transportation Studies. Our mission is to inform decision making and empower communities to improve roadway safety. Our vision is where we envision a world with zero roadway fatalities or serious injuries and a culture that prioritizes safe mobility. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues who are here with us today, Communications Lead Lisa Peterson and Policy and Program Analyst Anna Lopez. On our agenda for today, we will discuss the importance of sharing stories. We'll talk about perceptions of safety, redefining street story narratives, where and how to access street story data, and then we'll share some resources. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded, so please keep your audio on mute the entire presentation and type any and all questions or comments into the chat. If time permits, I will address your questions at the end, and if not, they will be addressed in a follow-up email along with the recording from today's webinar. The first question we'd like to address is, why do we share stories? We share stories to keep others informed, to keep ourselves informed, to feel heard and understood, and to bridge gaps in our communities, villages, or tribes. In the digital age, we know that there's more than one way to share a story. We have blogs and vlogs and a vast amount of social media platforms like TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the list goes on. And as a society, we have adopted and adapted to these platforms, which has seemingly made us become, comfortable with posting and sharing part of our lives, and primarily because it makes us feel connected to one another. So with that, why don't we encourage our communities to share stories about their travel experiences? And why don't we demand our planners and leaders to, one, listen to those stories, and two, use them in the decision-making process? Since the tool's development in 2018, we found a variety of ways where leaders and advocates can create a safe space for residents to share their experiences and discuss how those experiences have shaped and continue to shape their daily lives. A few ways you can encourage folks to share is at a community event, meeting, or walk audit. The collage you're looking at here shows different communities sharing experiences at an open street event, a walk audit, and a community meeting. And these spaces have created a safe place for these communities to be expressive. These stories that are being shared and that can be shared not only help planners identify and prioritize projects, but most importantly, it starts a conversation among residents and empowers them to continue the conversation and advocate for change. So these stories, they can be seen as perceptions of safety. And by definition, perceptions of safety is a measure of how safe a person feels and not how safe a neighborhood actually is. Well, watch this video, take a look at this video, 3-minute video, and hear from thought leaders and planners on the perceptions of safety. This video was produced by UC Berkeley SafeTREC, excuse me, and narrated by SafeTREC's graduate student Actions Nichols, and it features Equitable Cities, Charles T. Brown, City of Oakland's Warren Logan, and Together Toward Health, Esther Rivera. And they're talking about the importance of understanding the people and stories behind crash data. So let's take a look. Can you all hear now?
Yes, we can hear.
There's the built environment in which we live, and there's the way we perceive the built environment. Traffic safety professionals rely primarily on collision data and injury reports to assess the safety for travelers in an area. But these sources do not provide the whole story about people's perceptions of safety within a space.
I recall a number of times, really tragically, that people have been hit by cars walking their children home from school. Just this year, we lost, I think, 2 mothers who were in a crosswalk next to the school where they were picking up their kids. And when you think about the impact of any collision, but specifically a fatal collision between a car and a pedestrian, right? Someone walking. It's not just a number.
So when you think about typical data sources in traffic safety, I think one of the mistakes that we've used is we've valued quantitative data over qualitative data. It would be very beneficial if we figured out a way to incorporate the qualitative data into our traffic safety analysis. The witnesses that were present, their testimonies matter in terms of how we analyze what took place, as well as the testimony of the surviving drivers and pedestrians. However, when you look at our data sets across this country, all of that is absent, thus not painting a full picture as to what took place.
Understanding perceptions of bicyclists and pedestrians has garnered considerable interest by researchers in recent years, but there is still work to do in understanding perceptions of people as they travel on those modes and other modes such as rail, scootering, and ride-hail.
I think of children and parents who have a fear of walking in their community because of things like gang violence or gang recruitment. Even just the perception of that safety is another piece that keep people from walking and biking. And some of that has to do with just perceptions and not reality, but still needs to be considered in terms of how people feel safe just existing in public spaces. I know another key piece, especially for myself, is do I feel safe navigating this space alone as a woman? Do I feel like I can easily have an out if I feel unsafe all of a sudden?
The reality is that behaviors are influenced by environment. And the environments in which we find ourselves in is informed by institutional decisions at the federal, state, regional, and local level, which are influenced by the social inequities. There is a bidirectional relationship to social inequality and institutional inequality in America, which has led to the built environments that we have, which are the cause of the disparities that we see in traffic enforcement, in safety, in pedestrian fatalities and injuries in this country. And so until we start moving further upstream to see what the root causes are, we'll spend lifetimes addressing symptoms as opposed to the root cause of these problems.
One of the statements that I would like to highlight again is from Charles T. Brown when he said, when you think of typical data sources in traffic safety, one of the mistakes that we make, that we use, is that we value quantitative data over qualitative data. It will be very beneficial if we figured out a way to incorporate the qualitative data into our traffic safety analysis. And so the factor of the matter is that physical and environmental factors influence behavior patterns, especially in regards to the choice of mode of transportation. And it's important to understand and accept that in order to make the right infrastructure and non-infrastructure decisions, it's important for us to understand that in order to make those, the right decisions when it comes to non-infrastructure and infrastructure projects that can affect a community in the long term. The data typically collected, used in analysis don't tell the full story, as we saw in the video, of what's happening in the area. So that's where Street Story comes in. It's the platform, where communities or where planners can collect qualitative data on near misses, crashes, hazards, and safe locations in the state of California. And so that's Street Story. Street Story is an online crowdsourcing tool. It's a database for agencies and organizations, to collect that qualitative piece. It's a platform that encourages community engagement among residents, community leaders, advocates, and planners. And sometimes we do call it, a community engagement tool. And the information collected is free, it's publicly accessible, and can be used as part of needs assessments, applications for funding, and other traffic safety projects. The tool is available in English and Spanish, and also available in paper form for communities who may not be comfortable using, the internet or mobile devices, or who may not even have access, to internet or devices. You can also pull up Street Store on a mobile device. We don't have an application for it, but it is browser friendly. The tool is also available for use for anyone over the age of 13, and children 12 and under can use Street Story as long as they have adult supervision. So now we're going to take a look at the tool. I don't want to assume that everyone here knows what it looks like or knows how it functions. So we're going to take a look at Street Story. But before we do that, I'm going to define what the 4 report types are, where users can, make a report and share their stories. A crash, by definition, is an unintended event that causes death, injury, or property damage involving a motor vehicle in transport, in motion or in the readiness for motion, on a roadway or way or place, or any part of which is open to the use of the public for purposes of travel. So when users select crash, they can report about a crash that they were involved in or that they actually witnessed. A near miss is an event that did not cause injuries, but had the potential to do so. A hazard, something that could cause an incident involving a car, bicycle, etc. Safe place is a specific location, area where one feels safe to travel by any mode. So now we're going to take a look at Street Story. Go to streetstory.berkeley.edu, and this is what you'll see. Immediately, the user is asked to give input, and they can give input in a city, county, tribal, or unincorporated area. In this pop-up box, you also see useful links. You can go straight to the data page. You can access our resources, which I'll show you a little bit later. You can hear from communities about how they've used Street Story in their work. You can create a custom boundary, which is one of our special features that I'll highlight later as well. And then if you want to know more about the tool, this will direct you to the SafeTREC website. I mentioned that the tool is available in English and Spanish. So here you can click on this icon and it'll allow you to switch to the Spanish version. I must note that there's only one database. So while users can switch between English and Spanish, the same data you'll see in the English version, the same data you'll see in the Spanish version. So for this sake, we are going to submit a report just to show you how a user is asked to give information. I saw one of our planners from Shasta County has joined us. So I'm going to use Shasta County as an example. I'm going to select next. And then this box asks you to choose a location, type for your story, or see stories in your area. So a user can either, continue to submit a report by selecting a point or a line, or if they wanted to see the data in that area, they could just click see data and it'll go straight to the data page. You also have the option here to switch to the Spanish version of the platform. So I'm going to select location type and then point. There are icons on the left-hand side that helps users to navigate the tool, to zoom in, zoom out, back to the home page, click on the map to start or zoom to current location, location search. So if a user knows, exactly the specific address where they want to submit a report, they can type it here. Or if they want to go ahead and start drawing on the map to create a boundary of where they want to report, they can use this polyline. So you see, this is Shasta County. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to submit a report in Reading. Cancel there. So I'm going to keep zooming in till I see Reading, the city of Reading. Going to continue to zoom in. So I'm going to click on an intersection. I think this is Continental Street and Parsons Street. And this is an intersection. So wherever you click on the map, wherever a user clicks on the map, they will see that pop up on the right-hand side. So if you need to, move it, you can do so. You can click around to get it exactly where you want a user wants to submit a report. And then they can click on the report types that we previously discussed. So I'm gonna select near miss. There was a near miss at this intersection. And then the users will be asked to submit, to answer a series of questions, excuse me. So what was their mode of travel? Were they walking, biking, or other? Were they riding in a vehicle? And when did it happen? They can, either select report a date or report month or year and can enter that date here. Did it happen in the day or nighttime? Who else was involved in these near miss? And users can select all that applies. Were you or anyone else injured? And then they continue to answer these series of questions. What do you think caused this near miss? The most important part of street stories, what we stress the most, are the narratives. And the narratives are those stories that we've talked about. The narratives are those perceptions of safety. So here, users are able to, tell us about their travel experience without providing any identifying information, excuse me. They can let us know exactly what happened at that location, who, like I said, who was involved, what did they see, what they experienced, how it made them feel, how it how it affects them or their children's travel, to school. All of that information goes here. And once they leave that narrative, click next. What would make this place feel safer? We call this question the improvement suggestion question. And users are able to select however many answer choices. And then they have another space, for more suggestions. And we found since adding this question to the survey that, communities residents really know their neighborhoods. They really know the communities they live in. So, you know, the suggestions they're giving, are actual, um, integral to making their neighborhood or community safer. Because they travel along those roads each and every day, by themselves or, like I said, with their children, with their loved ones. So we usually see a lot of feedback on our end from, the improvement suggestion, question, and the narrative. So after they share or answer these series of questions, users can either add another location or they can choose to submit the report. So I'm going to choose to submit the report. And now you see that my report has been made. One thing we like to note for planners who, extract this data to be used for their projects is that you will see the narratives once we do an internal process of cleaning to make sure there isn't any identifying information. So sometimes users can submit a report and then they go to the data page to see, if their report is there. They can see the report, but they won't be able to see the narrative until that internal process is happening. It's just an FYI. So after they answer the first set of questions, we have the demographic questions, which is an optional section of the tool. So, genders and questions about gender, income, categories of subscribe you, age, and that these questions are most useful for planners. So after that, and sometimes they don't require, if they're doing an event, sometimes they won't require folks to use, or answer those questions, but they may want that information as part of like assessments. So yes. And I'm going to select next and submit. So we didn't, do the demographic portion. And you'll see here, this box says you can give more input by clicking on the map or going back, going back to the give input menu. Your input may be shared with community groups and agencies to make streets in your neighborhood safer. So you'll close this box. Again, the user will see the report they made. So now I want to go into the reports page and the narratives. So when planners and leaders are ready to, use this information for the assessments or, applications or any part of the project, this is where you would access the street story data. You can see this information in English or switch to Spanish, but like I mentioned earlier, it's all the same information into one database. It's not two separate databases. Again, all of this information is free. You can narrow down your reports by date. So if you're, doing a project and you're wanting to get feedback in a 2-week or 3-week span of time, you're able to, get all of your input between that time frame. And then when you're ready to gather the data here on the reports page, you can narrow down the reports, in your area to make sure you get, the data that you requested in that time frame. Also, the first thing you see here are the report maps, which are color-coded by report type. So the left map shows the crashes and near misses. The right map shows hazards and safe places. You have icons on each map to help you navigate the maps. All of this information you can print or you can download the data into an Excel sheet. So if you click on these dots, you will be able to see the narratives if the user submitted a narrative in their report. So for example, I just clicked on a near miss where a user submitted a report, but didn't submit a narrative. So I'm going to click on another one. So here you see a narrative, and this is a short sweet and brief one. My rear view mirror was pushed in, and this is a near miss, and it said the mode was using other mode of transportation. So this is just an example of what users see when they access this report page. So if you're wanting to just take a quick scan of something, or skim through the report page, you're able to access everything on this report page without having to download the data. You can also look at yearly trends. Report information is broken down into tables and charts. Right now, we have about almost 6,400 reports have been submitted, and 56% of those reports are hazardous reports that have been submitted. You have a breakdown of travel mode summary. You also have a breakdown of reports by mode. So how many, folks were biking, when they either witnessed or experienced the crash or near miss or hazard or safe place. Some people use multiple modes, not with crashes or near misses, but there were multiple modes involved as they thought, of a hazardous location or space. You also have a breakdown by mobility device, bike type, which is a micro mobility feature, location, riding a scooter, and then you have a breakdown of reports by cause. So 28% of folks feel like people don't yield. That's a big issue. And then behind that, a lot of folks feel like speeding is an issue. And then the breakdown of reports by improvement suggestions. So most folks typically feel like better or more bike lanes or pathways would help a place feel safer. And again, we're seeing speed being an issue. So they're requesting slower speeds. Then you have a breakdown of the demographic information that I said is optional. To note, you will not see the demographic information in your area unless 50 or more reports have been submitted in that area. But if if you want the demographic information and you don't see it in that area, you can request it from us at SafeTREC, and we can share that information with you. So that is all of the data that we have here on the reports page. And like I said, it's broken down into different sections and headings, and it can be printed in a full report to share with others, or you can download it into a sheet and look at all of the narratives in each category. You can look at the improvement suggestion category, the narratives, and also see exactly the community that folks are submitted a report in. Next, I would like to show you one of our features, which is the custom boundary feature. But before I move on to that, let me go back here. So we were in Shasta, and I just want to show you that you can see data. That was generally the data page for that was all of the data that's been collected in the state of California, excuse me. But if you're wanting to see data, in just your area, you can do so. So this is just the data in Shasta County so far, since we submitted a report in Shasta County. And you may be able to see their demographic information because, yes, they have a total of 54 reports. So we should see that demographic breakdown. Yes, we do. And again, when you're looking at the data, you can narrow down your dates. And if you want to include reports outside of your area, we can see that on the general page. But for counties, cities, if you wanted to include reports outside your area, you can do so here. So moving on to the custom boundary, feature. Users can create their own interest area and share with people by following the steps below. We do have, and I'll talk about the resources, but we do have, a street story starter guide on how to submit a report and use the tool. But we also have a custom boundary guide strictly for this feature to help users, create a custom boundary. So here you would, first select a county or a city. And then if you wanted to enter a specific address, you can do so here. Prior to this year, the only way to create a boundary was, to draw your own boundary using the tools. But now we have a feature which I've already uploaded here where you're able to upload your own boundaries. So say you already have a project in mind, you already know the community you want to get input from, and you don't want to go through, having to create your own boundary here. Simply you would just click the upload button, select your file, and it has to be these type of files, these formats, for it to actually be uploaded. And let me just refresh this page really quick because I had already uploaded a boundary. These icons weren't present to show you how to create it, so I just wanted to show you how to do that. So yeah, first you can use the drawing tool to create the custom boundary. So you can, after you select your city, your county or city, so I'm gonna stick with Shasta here. Reading. So it took me to that area. And then from here, I can create a boundary using a polygon, a polyline, a rectangle, drawing a circle using these icons on the side. You can select which tool you would like to use to create your boundary. You have these icons to zoom in, zoom out, select the county or the city, and yeah, you'll just select whatever tool. I'm gonna zoom in to Reading here. And so basically I've created, this boundary, and I can choose to enter a project name. This is an option to enter a due date for feedback. Like I said, if you have a time frame where you want to gather data, this is the option you have to, enter a due date. And then you have the option to enter your email address just in case you need to modify the area prior to or during the collection of data. So once that happens, a boundary is created. Then you'll share that link with them where they'll be able to just submit information or submit a report, within that boundary. They will only be able to submit information within that boundary you created. So you can get, the targeted feedback that you're requesting. So it's a really cool feature. Like I said, now you're able to upload your own boundary. So if you, know the project you're working on, and you don't want to, have to go through the tool to draw the boundary and, play with it. If you already have your boundary drawn, and, have it saved, you can just upload it and boom, it's there. You can make sure it, covers where you want it to cover, name your project, enter your due date, your information, create that boundary, share that link with your community, and they'll only be inputting information into that boundary you created. It's a really cool feature. So now we've talked about the narratives. We've talked about report types. We've talked about how to access street story data, where to access that data. And now I want to go over our resources. We have a lot of resources to help our planners and community leaders and advocates, as well as our residents, communities. So we have the Street Store webpage. We have tutorial videos in English and Spanish to show you how to navigate Street Store. And then we have how communities are using the tool. We do have a SafeTREC YouTube page with many videos, and one of those videos is um, excuse me. One of those videos is showing how communities such as Humboldt County and Bikes Bakersfield have used street store in their work. And then we have other resources such as new features. We talk about the improvement suggestion question, micromobility, and the custom boundary feature. So now I would like to show you exactly where you can access those resources. So if you go back to Street Story, I just went back to the home page, and that pop-up box here, excuse me, some of the under the useful links, you'll see resources. That's where all of our resources are housed under this website. You see the starter guide, the boundary instructions, fact sheets in English, the tutorial video in English, flyer templates, as well as transportation safety resources. If you switch to the Spanish version of the tool, you have the resources in Spanish. So it's the fact sheet, again, the tutorial video, custom boundary, and the starter guide. If you want to access the Street Story resources elsewhere, you'll go to SafeTREC, the safetrec.berkeley.edu website. You'll go to Tools, select Street Story. You want to read more about Street Story, you can leave that here. If you want to learn more about Street Story at work, we talk about using Street Story in Humboldt County. We talk about using Street Story in Muscoy, how Caltrans District 4 collected data to include in their pedestrian plan, and also how we have adapted the tool for use in tribal communities. If you want our technical assistance guides and resources, here they are. So we do offer in-person and online trainings to assist organizations. And it can be one-on-one trainings with planners and leaders, or we do in-person and online trainings for communities. So yeah, if you wanted to learn more about that, you would just email us. Also, again, those tutorial videos I mentioned on the YouTube page, you can, access them here from the SafeTREC Street Store webpage in English and Spanish. For more information about Street Store, those starter guides I mentioned, English and Spanish, to learn how to set a custom boundary, we have those as well in English and Spanish. If you want to access past recordings of webinars and events, you can access them here, FAQs, and research and publications. Our contact information, you can email us directly at streetstore@berkeley.edu, and you can email me directly at jcrowner@berkeley.edu. And right now, I would like to open up to questions, but first, I'd like to reiterate, that it is important that we gather these stories from communities because, again, no one, travels those roads more than they do. So their perceptions of safety are integral, again, to, advocating for funding and putting together assessments because they know and live in those communities. So Street Store is a great tool to get that qualitative data from those communities that can be used to advocate for funding and to prioritize, our traffic safety projects. Thank you for listening. Like I said, I'm going to open it up to questions. And if you want to take yourself off mute and ask a question, you can do so. And if you can't think of anything right now, or rather share in private, you can email us those questions. And like I said, we will address them. I can email you directly, or yeah, I can address them in the follow-up email or email you directly. I think there was a hand raised.
Philip?
Did you say Philip?
Yes.
Oh,
Hi,
yes.
Philip. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. I thought I had heard my name. So I've been involved with a Safe Routes to School program in LA, and you know, it's been a while. And sorry, that's my alarm. Just a second. I've been involved with this project, and they just got funded for $32 million. And you know, you mentioned the use of quantitative data in the form of traffic collision reports. And since I live in LA, and since 2021, the LA traffic safety officers only do reports on DUIs and hit and runs. So that leaves out a lot of accidents, or not accidents, of collisions. And we're going to be, you know, that is the Department of Transportation is going to be working with Caltrans to make all these different improvements. And it would be helpful to have, you know, like before and after statistics, including quantitative data. And since we won't have the traffic collision reports, it seems like Street Story would be a way of getting that data for before and after. And I just wondered if you have encountered that kind of situation anywhere else, and you know, how the quantitative data could make up for the lack of the qualitative data could make up for the lack of the quantitative data.
Yes, thank you, Philip, for that question. Congrats on the funding. That's awesome. And now, you know, you've been approved for funding to get some projects off the ground. We're going to invite other folks to answer as well, especially my colleagues from UC Berkeley SafeTREC. But what I will say is, not to my knowledge, we haven't experienced where someone who used Street Story, like for a before and after project, to track changes, you know, in infrastructure, non-infrastructure projects. But, you know, you can do that with the tool, because we do have that feature to, you know, narrow down the dates and, you know, create that custom boundary to, you know, get feedback within a certain time frame. So if you're wanting to, you know, go ahead and capture data before, you know, projects get started, or, you know, long-term changes, or, you know, starting to be made, then if you want to go ahead and start capturing that data now, you can do so. And then once those changes are implemented, and you want to, you know, see if perceptions of safety, you know, has changed from those changes, then you can request to, you know, get feedback again from those, you know, those same group of folks that you know, requested that information from before. But if anyone else wants to address or answer that, please feel free to do so. And if Philip, if you have, you know, follow up to my response.
Yes. Also, sorry. Also, are you aware of other jurisdictions that have, you know, greatly reduced the number of I guess the so in other words, typically they would do reports for people killed or people seriously injured, but if they're only doing reports for DUIs and hit and runs, my understanding is that it limits it to about 20% of the accidents. And I'm just wondering if they're, I'm assuming they're doing this for budgetary or staff reasons, and have other jurisdictions that you're aware of and had that same issue.
Not that I'm aware of. No, not that I'm aware of. And I don't know if, again, other folks have come across these issues.
Yeah, so I can also share with when we've worked with in other unincorporated communities, for example, right? I'll share the example of like an unincorporated community in in the Kern County area. For example, they told us when we worked with them that they only had one police officer to cover, or very limited police officers, sorry, to cover a big area. And they had very high response times. So they were, they were particularly concerned about underreporting in their community. And one of the things they did was, so this issue, right, that you speak to of budgetary maybe constraints that have created underreporting in the actual existing data. And they have also felt like it's impacted their ability to, for example, get additional funding for additional improvements. So one of the things that they've decided to do is also to use StreetStory to collect, near miss and all crashes, unsafe and safe locations. So they've done a big effort to try to incorporate that into their both do outreach for it, but also to incorporate that into their plans.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Emma. Yes, thank you.
I was just also going to share as that for StreetStory, not meant to be taking the place of traditional reporting of crashes, but as Jarah mentioned and has reinforced, it helps to complete the picture of the state of safety for those that are living within the community. And Philip, you spoke about how due to these staffing constraints or lack of funding, how some of the other type of traffic safety issues might emerge through the ability to collect this qualitative data. For instance, we saw with the report data that there was information about unsafe speeds, infrastructure issues, failure to yield to pedestrians. So I think this can be valuable to help complete the picture around what some of the other pressing traffic safety concerns are in a specific area, to help inform efforts that you have in partnership with the DOT and Caltrans to determine what exactly the issues are in the community that the funding can help address.
Thank you for that, Lisa. I see that Dorothy Wong has made a comment in the chat. Would you like to expand on that, Dorothy?
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I have my working from home face, so I'm just going to talk. But anyway, yeah, it's been obviously a whirlwind because of traffic safety and relevance of it. It's crazy how it all aligns, because sadly we had two of our residents killed last November and December trying to cross the street 3 weeks apart. But that did, of course, move things into action. I may have already talked a little bit about this, but it just evolved into our Board of Supervisors and our Public Works really starting to work with our Traffic Safety and Mobility Committee, and also just getting momentum on a lot of this. So we just finished we applied for a Go Human SCAG grant for community hubs, and we didn't get selected. But from that, we were offered the opportunity to use the Go Human kit of parts, if you all know what that is. But they're basically little sort of demonstrations of what it would look like. What is a curb extension? You know, what is a parklet? And what is a protected bike lane? So other items too. So we chose some of those, and it was like a really painful process of trying to actually get Public Works to feel what we were trying to do, and then getting the new community market and the parks. The market was really great, and they said, whatever you want to do. And then the parks to say, what are you going to do? So that was really difficult, but we did actually get the parks, Public Works to sign on, and the Board of Supervisors to actually write a letter of recommendation. So we're taking big baby steps in unincorporated Los Angeles County, Altadena. And we've been learning, again, the walk audit tool has been so powerful. You know, thanks to you guys again, with then our partnership with California Walks. So now we did a lot of different ways of, you know, trying to get the community engaged, including activating, you know, we did a little pop-up bike park. Who couldn't do that since I'm, you know, the bike educator gal. And we got the highway patrol to come, and then that just, everything snowballed. We did a tour of the local community garden. We got them involved. And then another organization that's doing a lot of work, Amigos de los Rios, they have a grant to do wayfinding signage, but bringing them together with Public Works, they were stuck. The grant was running out. And then now we made that connection. So that's my long story of saying that this Berkeley SafeTREC tool, Street Story, is definitely, it's something that we couldn't do right on the spot because people just gave us a few minutes of time. But in a way for us to sort of synthesize the data, we're going to be, you know, doing our work from the committee to then put this into, you know, into the Street Story tool, and then continue to do that work with then getting the parents and schools involved, because we're now going to have 8 schools participating in Walk to School Day, which is, we've gone from 2 schools to 8. So that's a 400% increase. And then the library's involved. So we got a lot of momentum. So thank you for, again, all the work. You guys know I'd like to talk too much, but it's just, I really see this tool as being key, and it's just going to be that capacity to get our community to understand how to use it, and then for us to really use it as a tool for our report backs. That's it.
Thank you, Dorothy. I really appreciate you sharing that, sharing your efforts, experiences, challenges, and we look forward to continue support you and your work in Altadena. Does anyone else have any other questions or something they would like to share?
I do. Councilwoman Vicki Riddle from Exeter. Just segueing. Hi, good to see you. You've helped us so much. You have no idea. But I want to comment on Dorothy, our last contributor here. So Sheila Bonnier, are you on with us? She's our project manager for a grant application. But the reason why I wanted to speak is to say we took Street Story to back to school night. So we have a major highway that runs through the middle of our town with a high school, an elementary school, 2 preschools, and another elementary school that are perpendicular. And we've had several kids that have been hit, and several of these incidents have gone unreported. So I love the fact that we can do a qualitative data collection, which I guess you could say is subjective, but that's so important. For example, our activities director knows 8 kids, just with the 8 of her students that were hit in the crosswalk while crossing. So she's able to contribute quite a bit. We don't know if some of these have been non-reported. But what I just wanted to say is that we took this to back to school night. Our superintendent got very involved, and a lot of schools have the Parent Square application where parents receive emails from the school every day. And our superintendent was able to send out Street Story in English and in Spanish to all of the parents, all of the students, and all of the staff. So that's almost 2,000 people. And then our Boy Scout troop, as a community project, took Street Story as their project, and they are handing out door-to-door 600 surveys this weekend. So it's been this wonderful, wonderful community engagement. I don't know what we would do without you, Jarah.
Thank you, Vicki, for sharing that. And I'm just enjoying hearing about your stories. And I wish we had more time. But thank you all for attending our webinar. If you have any more questions or concerns, please feel free to go back, email us. If you want us to connect you to other folks from, different regions and organizations that may can help you in your work, we can do that as well. Again, thank you and have a good rest of your day.